it's the international break. And you know what that means. I get to say this again. There is still games going on in the international break, and MLS is one of these weird leagues that still has these games. Don't ask me why. We still have club team playing during the international break, and as I said before, I don't like this idea whatsoever of clubs playing during the international break, but it is how MLS is set up. And by the way, before I get into these action, which, there's going to be a bit of a kind of wacky situation we have in terms of these 8 games, because all of these games are not going to be taking place on the weekends, but it also takes place in the midweek too. And I decided to do one whole video of the weekend games and the midweek games, because if I separate both of them, I have to make 2 video on that, and since there's only like 8 games between now and the end of the international break, might as well just kind of combine together. And also, because I'm doing this kind of combination of combining weekend games to midweek games, there will be team on this board that will be shown up twice. For example, DC showed up twice in the score, or New England showed up twice in this board, and the same thing goes with Orlando City. So yeah, this is kind of a bit awkward. Have to talk about the same team again in some of these games, but it is what it is. I kind of don't want to do 2 video just to do like 8 games, because I'm pretty sure I can fit all 8 games into one video. But first of all, before we start this, I gotta talk about the US versus Colombia game, because I did watch the game. I watched not the whole game, but I missed the first 15 minutes because I thought the game was going to kick off at 8. Yes, I know the game says it was 7:30, and I'm fully acknowledge that it is at 7:30 the game that was stated. But US games, and for people that always watch the US men's national team play, they never kick off at the time that it's stated. Usually they're like 10 minutes late, and sometimes, like last time when they play against Mexico, it was 40 minutes after the time that they stated. And even some news article says that the game will probably kick off somewhere around 8 o'clock, because for whatever reason, those 30 minutes are just kind of dead time, and just kind of a time to squeeze as many commercial as possible to get us some revenue for this country. I mean, yeah, I don't like it whatsoever. I wish they just give the proper kind of time so that we can actually just tune in. But instead, the game actually kicked off 15 minutes late, and I tuned in right about 8:01, and by the time when I tuned in, it was already at the 16 minute. And also, I turned the TV off after the 79th minute when Colombia scored that 4th goal, because I knew at that time it was over. Like, there's just nothing else to watch with this team. And I rarely turn TV or turn games off, especially the teams that I supported. But after watching this game, yeah, I just got so frustrated watching this team and how they performed that I just kind of rage quit in terms of watching this game. Like, holy crap, the defense in this game was absolutely shocking for us. And I get it. We are facing against Colombia, and we are facing some of the best kind of player on this team, guys like James Rodriguez, Falcao, and also Baca. But seriously, you would think that our defense would be a little bit better. And knowing from our previous game when we play against big opponent and how I saw the defense look pretty good, this was just unexpected for me. Like, I thought for sure that defense was probably our biggest strength in terms of when we face against big team, but in this game, it's the complete opposite. It's like that defense never exists in this game. How many times that James Rodriguez completely just toy with our defense? Yeah, that is... I kind of lost count, because he absolutely torched our defense play after play after play, and it wasn't just the defense that kind of frustrated me about this team, but also the midfield and just going forward for our team. We basically did nothing going forward for a majority of this game. Bobby Wood was basically kind of left alone and pretty much just stranded up top because he's just getting no service whatsoever. And probably the most important thing that I hate about this game is Michael Bradley is starting in this team. Like, how in the world is he still in this team? Like, okay, I understand you want to put him in for the leadership to try to gain some experience for these young guys, but when he's making mistake on the pitch, yeah, what kind of leadership is that? If anything, that's not leadership. That's more like you're just showing these young guys that how to make these kind of silly mistakes that I've made. And you've seen how he's been playing with TFC this season and how he's just kind of putting his U.S. men's national team form now into his club form, and I just don't get how in the world does he even get called up for this. Like, seriously, I really pray that we will never see Michael Bradley anywhere near the U.S. men's national team shirt. And for all those guys that were on that team that beat Trinidad and Tobago, maybe except for Pulisic, all those guys, I hope that will never wear a U.S. men's national team shirt ever again, because it is just absolutely disgraceful of what we did in that game, and these guys should be suffer the consequences of just getting banned from being in the national team and representing the country. So yeah, obviously I'm very frustrated about that game. And another thing that I was also very frustrated about that game is the lack of U.S. support in the stands. I mean, when you look at the stadium, it was all yellow jersey, maybe except for a small patch where the American Outlaw was sitting, but after that it was just all yellow shirt, all Colombia fans. And I understand that there's a couple of reasons why this is the case. The most obvious reason why this is the case is because tickets prices is incredibly expensive. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that US Soccer Federation is charging triple digit amount of money to go to watch a game. And we are watching a US team that is in a transitional phase and watching a bunch of kids that don't have a lot of experience, and we're always going to potentially lose those games because of that. And yet the US Soccer Federation is still charging us like we're watching Brazil playing right now. I mean, it is just absolutely ridiculous, and it's no wonder why a lot of US fans are not showing up, because they're tired of paying those prices. They're not going to just go there and watch that kind of garbage every single game. And also, there are a couple of people that are just clearly outpriced by the tickets. I mean, I can guarantee you, if that ticket was maybe about $25 or $30, I guarantee you we will see less yellow shirt in the stand. I guarantee you that US fans will actually show up and support the team. But because of the fact that the tickets price is just absolutely ridiculous, they of course won't be showing up. And you know, if I ask you, would you want to go to a US men's national team game that they're charging $100 and you're just watching a bunch of these kind of youth player that don't know what exactly they're doing? Obviously you are not gonna go. And even if the US are playing here at San Jose, for example, now for a friendly, I still will not go to that game if they charge me $100 to go to a match. But you know, that is obviously the reason why US fans are not showing up. The second reason is pretty much what I said about how the product that the US are putting are mostly youth guys, and I know a lot of US fans don't want to see these kind of youth guys. They want to wait for a couple of years before they want to see the resort, because with these youth guys you are probably expecting not a lot from them. They're obviously going to make a couple of mistakes, and you're still not going to see the best of them until later on. And also, a lot of US fans are still pissed off about what happened last year with us missing the World Cup. And I'm one of those people that are because of that. But still, you know, at the end of the day, I wish we shouldn't be playing an away game every single day. Like, we're basically like the Chargers of international soccer right now. I mean, you know how the Charger in the NFL, whenever they play a home game, it's an away game for them because all those fans shows up at StubHub Center where the Galaxy play. We're basically like that pretty much in international soccer. But either way, getting back into the MLS action after I have a bit of a rant about the U.S. men's national team and also the fan support and the federation, which one more thing I'll mention about the U.S. men's national team is please get a manager, okay? Dave Saracen is just, he needs to go. Like, seriously, he is definitely not going to be a guy that will stick around. And if we do not hire a proper manager in these next couple of months, then I am not even going to pay attention anymore. Because right now, it's pretty clear that with the fact that we haven't signed a proper manager, this might be one of the reasons why the team doesn't seem like it's showing a lot of improvement. Because you need a manager to try to get these youth guys some kind of confidence and try to guide the team back to relevance. But because of the fact that you're still sticking with Dave Saracen, which is pretty much like a yes man of Bruce Arena, it's just clearly killing the development of this team. And I just think that we got to get a manager soon. Like, it's been over a year since we have a manager. It's been a year that Dave Saracen as the interim manager. I mean, Dave Saracen might even break the record for the longest interim manager job in history with the fact that how long he's been there. I mean, please, we got to get a manager soon. You know, this is just ridiculous of how long it has taken us to finally find a manager. And if we do find that manager and he does not do well with this team, then you know a lot of fans will question this federation and a lot of people will just give up supporting this team because there's just no hope with this team whatsoever. Kind of like supporting the Quakes for all these years of just years after years of disappointment and no hope. Although, to be fair, now we got Almeida and maybe that might be the beacon of light that we will have next season. But either way, I'm kind of getting a little bit off track in terms of the national team stuff because after all, this video is going to be about the match review or the match preview for match week number 33, if I am correct. It might be 34, but I'm going to say for now it's 33. LAFC take on Houston. This game is going to be tomorrow on Friday. So LAFC, of course, tie with Sporting KC for the first round bye position, also known as the second position, also known as the last spot for the first round bye. And, you know, for LAFC, this is certainly an important game for them because, you know, they want to clinch that first round bye, and they're playing a Houston team that kind of gave up now. I mean, it just feels like ever since they find out that they're going to potentially get eliminated from the playoff, they just kind of give up. And it was evident in that game against the Sounders. And yeah, I expect LAFC to win this one. The only thing that I am still concerned about this LAFC team, and I know I've been saying this weeks after week, but this is really a concern, is that what are you going to do with that midfield once the playoff time comes? Because that midfield is clearly a huge issue with this team. There's just not enough creativity whatsoever, and that I felt like with them just so heavily relying on Vela as the guy to create them those good opportunity, that teams is going to find a ways to stop them. And you know, once playoff time comes, I know for a fact that a lot of teams are just going to double team Vela and just kind of put him out of the game and see who exactly will step up. And so far as we've seen this season, once teams started to shut down Vela doing games, there's just really not a lot of other players that can step up for this team to create those chances for this team. And that is my big concern with this team going forward. But still, as for now, I think they need to make sure that they win this game so that potentially they can clinch that first round bye, and it's important to clinch a first round bye. You don't have to go through the knockout stage where, in the knockout stage you get one game, and if you lose that game, you're out of the playoffs. And when you do have a first round bye, you can avoid that, and then you can go to the I believe the semifinal of the conference playoffs, and you have 2 games to play with, So it's huge for a team to clinch the first round bye rather than play a knockout round. But moving on into the next match. So this is probably the most irrelevant match of this week because, both teams are eliminated from the playoffs. But the Loons does have a chance to surpass their win total from last season. If you remember, I did the Minnesota Moving Forward series. I talk about how they're tied on the number of points and also the number of wins that they had last season. And they have a chance to do that this week. And I'm pretty sure they're going to do it because, one, they're playing at home, which is just something that they've been very good at this season. And it's just TCF Bank Stadium is an absolute fortress. No matter who is facing Minnesota in that game, when Minnesota is at home, Minnesota always have a chance to win the game. And the second reason is that they're playing Colorado. And this is no disrespect to the Rapids, but, the Rapids is pretty much like a punching bag these days. Like, whenever you face the Rapids, you are expected to win the game, which is why I kind of expect the last game or the last home game of the season for the Quakes, when we do play against Colorado, I expect us to actually win that game too and give the fans something to cheer about one last time before we head into the new era of Quakes football. But yeah, again, I expect Minnesota to win this one over Colorado, and they of course will surpass their total wins and also the points that they got from last season. But next up, so DC, of course, this is the first game that they play in this match week. Their second game is going to be in the midweek week, and it's going to be on Wednesday. So DC, of course, play against FC Dallas, and by the way, both of these games are at home. Both of these are at Audi Field, and both of these games are actually the game in hand that they have over Montreal. So, it's if DC can win both of those games, then they could potentially build a 4-point gap over Montreal. But it's not going to be easy because their first game is against FC Dallas, and since we're talking about DC, I might as well just talk about this game also, which they play against TFC. And I think this one will be the tougher one because FC Dallas, they still have something to play for. They have a chance to clinch the first round bye with a win. And I'm not quite sure, do they have a chance to clinch the top spot in the West? I believe they don't, because I think they are only about 2 or 3 points above Sporting KC. But they have a chance to clinch a first round bye with a win in this game against DC United. And, for DC United, they have definitely looked very impressive in the second half of the season. But the last game was anything but that. I mean, the last game was a real struggle for them. And they really need to step up their performance from the last game if they want to win against FC Dallas, because this is an FC Dallas team that, like I said, still something to play for, and it is a team that is a very, very decent team and will always find a way to get a result. But moving on, the next match, New England take on Orlando City. So 2 of these teams will play again in the midweek games. Orlando City will play against the Sounder, where, just to talk about this game, Seattle's probably going to win this one. I mean, I shouldn't even say probably. They will win this one because, the Sounders, although the Sounders haven't been impressive in these last couple of games, they've been playing a lot of cakewalk kind of team. And I think even though this game is on the road, Orlando City is in a run where it is just so bad that I kind of don't want to mention it to Orlando City fans, because if I mention it, they will be mad at me, and they just keep saying that I'm just bragging on them and just making their pain even more kind of like putting salt into already a huge gaping wounds that is Orlando City's season. And the first game against the Revs, that one will definitely be a game where it's definitely going to be tough. I think if you have to ask me which game is tough, and technically both of these games are tough, but this one is tougher because New England have something to fight for. Like the Revs, they have to win this game if they want to stay off from elimination. If they do not win this game or draw this game against Orlando City, they're done in terms of their season. So, if I speak in a New England kind of perspective, the Revs will just pretty much be a team that is going to be very hungry coming into this game, and knowing that they're playing against Orlando City, they should expect themselves a win because of how bad Orlando City has been. But one thing I will say to the Revs is be careful not to think that this is just an easy 3 points, and that by the time you head to this game, you would potentially still be alive. Like, they cannot get caught in this trap kind of game. And in some way, this is kind of a trap game for New England, because they might think about the RSL game next, and that one would be more important and potentially a game that they're not guaranteed to win and keep their season alive. So yeah, it is important for New England to try to win this game to stay alive for another week, or another game in this case. But moving on into the Vancouver versus Sporting KC game, because I already talked about both of these games earlier. So Vancouver are 3 points behind RSL with a game in hand, and if Vancouver can win that game in hand, then they would tie RSL, and I'm not quite sure who actually owns the first tiebreaker. But Sporting KC are currently tied with LAFC for the first round bye spot, which again, that's the last first round bye spot at second place, the last spot for a team to get a bye in the knockout round. And this is definitely a big game for both teams for different reasons. For Vancouver, they want to keep on the pressure on RSL to potentially leapfrog them, and also make sure that the Galaxy does not get any closer to RSL. And keep in mind, the Galaxy is another team that they're fighting for this playoff race. There's basically a free team kind of battle for this last spot in the Western Conference, and certainly Vancouver, they definitely have the tougher role in terms of all three of these teams. But having said that, if they want to keep some pressure on RSL, if they want to keep in this playoff hunt, they need to win this game. Because if they lose this game, and let's say RSL win that game, that means it's a 6-point gap. And even with a game in hand, you still be behind RSL with a 3-point gap. And again, I'm not quite sure exactly who owns the tiebreaker between the Whitecaps and RSL. If Vancouver does able to win that game in hand, and at that point, that means both team will be tied on points. And if RSL does own the tiebreaker, then you better believe Vancouver's got to win this, because if Vancouver lose this, that means they could be three points out, even if they win that game in hand. And with just 2 games left in the season, you got a 3-point gap, 2 games left in the season. A tie will not work for them if RSL does own the tiebreaker, and at that point, Vancouver is pretty much screwed. But for Sporting KC, themselves, they definitely want to win this game, because they do not want to see LAFC get that first round bye. Now, I think if you ask me who really need this first round bye between LAFC and Sporting KC, it has to be Sporting KC. I mean, for Sporting KC, if you ask any Sporting KC fan, they will tell you that that knockout round is like hell for them in these last couple of seasons. Every time when Sporting KC get into that knockout round, they always lose. They always choke in that spot. So the last thing they want this season is to once again get back into this knockout round. And even though they do get home field advantage in that knockout round, it doesn't really matter because they know the history of how bad they've been doing in the knockout round in the last couple of seasons. And also, this is kind of a traditional kind of decline period for Sporting KC. I mean, Sporting KC have definitely struggled in these last two games with back-to-back 1-1 draw. So, if you're a Sporting KC fan, if you lose or draw this game, it kind of felt like it's Groundhog Day all over again. It kind of felt like what has happened in the last couple of years where you just always seem to kind of get into this stage where you're kind of in a decline, and once the curtain come up, you basically choked in the knockout round. So, for Sporting KC, they definitely want to win this one to try not to avoid what has happened to them in the last couple of seasons and avoid that hellish kind of knockout round that they might involve. But moving on into the last game, and this could potentially be the biggest game of the weekend, depending on if New England could stay alive for another game, because if New England stay alive and win this one against Orlando City, then certainly this will be a big game for New England, because that is a game that, once again, they are up for elimination and that they need to win in that match so that they can avoid elimination. But as for RSL, they also need to win that match too. And in fact, this is a must-win for both of these teams. As I said with New England, why it's a must-win for them. But for RSL, it's a must-win for them because this is the last home game that they have. And you know how much I've been saying that RSL need to win their home matches, considering the fact that they're bad on the road. And keep in mind, RSL, this is actually the second to last game for RSL. After this week, they played the season finale against the Portland Timbers, but they're not playing the Timbers on the last week of the season and on decision day. They're playing it next week, and after that, RSL season is pretty much over, and RSL is the only team out of all 23 teams that will not be playing in decision day. And if you're an RSL fan, you better hope that you are in a good position after that last game of the season against the Timbers. Because if you're heading into that last game of the season against the Timbers still in doubt of potentially making the playoffs or not, and that it has to go down to decision day, boy, that is going to be a really nerve-wracking time for them. And, as a neutral fan, I kind of want to see that happening, but I'm pretty sure for RSL fans, they do not want to see that happen. It is going to be a hell of a train kind of, or roller coaster kind of ride heading to the last weekend if they did not clinch the playoff spot. And I kind of feel like that could be a position that they might find themselves in, because even if they beat New England in this game, they have to play against the Timbers on the road. And that's the same team that they lost last weekend, 4-1. So, yeah, that is, if you lose to a team 4-1 and it was a home game and you know that you're bad on the road, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen in that game against the Timbers. Unless if they have to rely on the MLS kind of weirdo kind of thing where for whatever reason, sometime a MLS game does not go into script. But I'm pretty sure that RSL right now, because of that 4-1 loss against Portland, they just put themselves in this very bad position. And it's really hard to find a bright spot with this team of potentially will make it to the playoffs. And the only bright spot, I think, is that they need to win their last two games of the season, which is not going to be easy whatsoever. It's going to be almost as hard as New England potentially making the playoffs this season. So, yeah, that is pretty much it for my preview of all 8 of these games that's going to be happening throughout the weekends and also into next midweek. Now, because all these games happen during the weekend and next midweek, I won't be able to do the review until next Thursday. So, yeah, that's a long time from now, and I might forget some of these games, although I'll make sure on Thursday I'll watch the highlights of all these games again just to kind of refresh my memories. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.